Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being here with us today. Good afternoon. I'll give folks a moment to join the meeting. All right, and let's get started. Good afternoon. Again, my name is Allison Wilhite. I'm the program manager for LA Repair. And for today's session, we're doing an overview, an information session about our advisory committee and community engagement partner opportunity that we're currently recruiting for and that the applications are open for. Before we jump into the presentation, just want to do a quick overview with Zoom. For folks who may not be familiar with it, wanted to note that for today's presentation, we're doing this as a meeting instead of a webinar because we do want to be able to engage with you and have you be able to ask us questions at the end and have more of a conversation about what these roles will entail. But we do ask that while we're presenting, if you can please mute yourself, as well as when it comes to your video, you're welcome to have your video on, but if you would rather be off video, you're welcome to do that too. Just wanted to note where you can find your unmute and mute buttons as well as the video buttons. We'll be taking questions at the end of the presentation, but if during the presentation you have some questions that come up, please feel free to put them into the chat and we'll make sure we address those when we conclude. As well as wanted to note that today's presentation is being offered in Spanish. So for folks who would prefer to be part of the Spanish interpretation, you can click the little interpretation icon, looks like a globe at the bottom of the screen, and that will take you into the Spanish interpretation space.
Hola a todas y a todos, bienvenidas a la sesión informativa para el programa LA Repair, para los Community Engagement Partners y para Advisory Committee. El día de hoy vamos a estar haciendo una presentación breve y tenemos la interpretación al español, en caso de que su primer idioma o el idioma que usted prefiera es el español. Para acceder a esto, usted puede hacer clic en la pequeña esfera o el mundo que tiene en el lado derecho, en la parte de abajo, donde dice interpretación o interpretation. Ahí va a hacerle clic y le va a seleccionar al idioma español. Entonces usted va a acceder a un canal en donde va a estar toda la información en español. También le pedimos, si es muy amable, de poder ponerse en mudo o en mute cuando estemos haciendo la presentación. Y si desea iniciar su video, puede hacerlo en la esquina inferior izquierda para que podamos verle. En caso de que tenga alguna pregunta durante la sesión, siéntase en la libertad de poder ponerla en el chat para que podamos ir respondiéndola en tiempo real. Sin embargo, le pedimos que no haga sus preguntas habladas, sino hasta el final de la sesión.
Thank you so much, Edna. So next, I want to give an overview of our presentation today. We'll begin by providing some brief introductions of the team. Then we'll dive into what LA Repair is, and then how specifically you can be involved with this program. We'll go over the specific roles and responsibilities for both the advisory committee opportunity and the community engagement partner opportunity. We'll then discuss, We'll then discuss the timeline and expectations for the program, and we'll conclude with kind of an overview of the potential for a conflict of interest that we need to be really mindful of. At the very end, we'll open it up to questions and answers where we can have more of a conversation with you all about what to expect with this program. Just want to note that we are recording today's information session and the slides will be uploaded to repair.lacity.org by the end of today. So please don't feel too obligated to take too many notes during this. We'll be able to provide you all this content through our website at the end of today. A quick overview of the team. So on today's call, you have myself, Allison Wilhite, the LA Repair Program Manager, as well as Omar Cardenas, who is our outreach coordinator for this program. And we're joined by Ana Sandoval from Participatory Budgeting Project, one of our partners in the implementation of this work. To give you a little bit of grounding and context for LA Repair and how it is that it's administered, we are part of the City of Los Angeles, the Civil Human Rights and Equity Department. The role of our department is to focus on maintaining and strengthening the city's diversity, equity, and accountability. We do that through a number of different means. Most prominently, we are the discrimination enforcement arm for the city, as well as we manage commissions, community engagement work, equity initiatives, and upward mobility programming. LA Repair is part of our department's mission, and it's a project that we take the lead on. But we can't do it without our partners, which we're excited to have Participatory Budgeting Project, a national nonprofit, support us in this work. They come with the technical expertise of how to implement participatory budgeting from their experience in doing this in other cities. And with them, they also bring in support for facilitation and evaluation through the partners of Tres Lunas Consulting and Estelano Advisors. Also, this work requires partners from everyone across the city, everyone who's involved with our repair zones, individuals and community organizations alike, which is why we opened up this conversation to talk about this unique opportunity now. So next, we're going to dive into the what is of LA Repair. What is this program? So I'm going to hand it over to Omar on my team to get into the specifics.
Sounds good. Thank you, Allison. Again, my name is Omar Cardenas. I'm the outreach coordinator for LA Repair, and we'll be going over a bit about what LA Repair is and hopefully answer some of your questions as we go along. Next slide, please. So LA Repair standing for Reforms for Equity and Public Acknowledgement of Institutional Racism. The goal of LA Repair, amongst many, is to distribute roughly $8.5 million directly to 9 communities called repair zones through a process called participatory budgeting. And here we have a kind of 6-step process of implementing this program. Starting with number 1 is the design process. Repair zone committees will develop a program guidebook, kind of how to structure and some of the rules that can be followed within the framework of this program. Next up is the idea collection. This is where we'll hopefully have the help of our CEP and AC members going amongst the community and getting feedback within the community of what they want to see in their communities, of course. Next up is the development of the proposals. So nonprofits and community-based organizations will use the idea collections, which were created into program concepts to hopefully address these program concepts. So for example, in this past cohort, one of the program concepts were to see more green spaces and within the community. So a lot of the proposals were along the line of creating community gardens, just one example of many others, right? Next up is the most exciting and most exhilarating time, in my opinion, just because there's so much action within the community, is the voting phase. We just wrapped up the voting phase for cohort number 1, and it was a great time. There was a lot of involvement within AC and CEP members in collaboration with council offices, libraries, you name it. As long as we're out in the community, we're doing our job, right? So this is where hopefully the community members will really show up and really get their voices heard. And next up is the funding and implementation of the programs. There's a lot of moving parts within this process, and this is where we're currently at for this first cohort. The city funds programs proposals, they're all being monitored, and we're tallying up the votes and going through the various processes to get that going. And next up is the evaluation process. The repair zone committees and city reflects to make recommendations to the mayors and city councils. So this is really where we can take key takeaways to streamline and move the process forward more efficiently moving forward. Next slide, please. So a lot of the questions we receive is why were these particular 9 zones selected? So there was a lot of factors put into consideration, but generally these neighborhoods have been greatly impacted by structural and historic racism. And some of the factors considered was employment and poverty data, home access to internet, COVID-19 case rates, CDC social vulnerability indexes, CalEnviroScreen environmental indexes, and historically redlined neighborhoods. And another question we receive a lot is, why are some neighborhoods being bundled up? For example, in this next cohort, we have Arleta and Pacoima. Even though they're 2 different neighborhoods, they're being joined together. This is because we're using the community plan areas. And this is why some of the neighborhoods you might see are all bundled up. But again, moving forward, next slide, please. You'll see some of the breakdowns as well, not just Arleta, Pacoima, you see some of the other neighborhoods as well. But the repair zones highlighted in green are the ones selected for this next cohort. We see Arleta, Pacoima, Westlake, West Adams, Baldwin Village, Lamar Park, Skid Row, South LA, Harbor Gateway, Wilmington, and Harbor City. Next slide, please. So here is how we have a breakdown of the funds. So every repair zone will receive a minimum of 775,000, and anything past 150,000 people in that repair zone will receive an amount above that, but at a prorated rate. So for example, Boyle Heights receives 775,000 based off its population, but the repair zone, for example, of Southeast LA receives over 1.5 million, but that's because the population is twice as big, right? Just to kind of clear the air there's no favoritism here, it's just all based on population. But of course, if you have any questions, we're more than happy to answer those at the end as well. Next slide, please. And here we have a great video from our partners of Participatory Budgeting Project that will really give you a background and understanding of this program and why we're doing it really. So if you do have your mics on, your headphones on, please turn up the volume and enjoy.
Right, if you live in this community and you pay taxes, come out and vote, decide how your tax dollars get spent.
Participatory budgeting gives people real power over real money to make the decisions that affect their lives. It's a democratic process in which ordinary community members directly decide how to spend part of the public budget.
Oh, this is different because you're actually voting for where the money is going to be spent instead of allowing them to decide where to spend the money.
Who knows better about their community than the people that live in their community?
Not be afraid of the big words, participatory budgeting. It sounds boring, but it's the opposite of that.
So how does it work? First, people brainstorm ideas. They come together in meetings and assemblies and start to think of what kinds of projects they would like to see in their neighborhood.
We had to think big. We have $1 million that we could use so we can fund parks, health issues, streets.
Volunteers work with experts to turn people's initial ideas into full project proposals.
We started with maybe about 40 projects, and so we had a series of budget delegate meetings, and we narrowed down the list into about 4 or 5 projects.
We met with the Parks Department and we talked about what we wanted to see change in some of the parks and how we were going to work with them.
What are the real needs of the community if you only have a certain amount of money? What is it that you can do that's going to benefit as many people as possible?
I'm dreaming of new benches, modern benches. Seniors have nowhere to go.
Displays at bus shelters throughout the district, and it will tell people when the next bus is due to arrive.
We're asking for a projector and 30 Mac laptops.
State-of-the-art fitness center.
To put solar panels on a firehouse.
After volunteers share the top projects, the community gets ready to vote.
It's a way of validating every voice in our community and saying, you know what, whatever your position is, you live in our community, you have a right to decide. And that me as a representative and government should respond and should listen to that voice. Anybody could vote in this process, immigrants, whether you're documented or not, and people that normally don't get to vote.
Most people, they don't even know that 16-year-olds can come out here and vote today. Some of them are really surprised. They said, really? I said, yes. They have a voice.
The projects with the most votes get funded.
The Red Hook Library Community Garden, right here.
The projects are then implemented over the next few years. And the following year, the process starts again. People brainstorm new ideas, turn them into new projects, vote on them, and fund more improvements for their community. PB becomes part of the budget process. It becomes a new way of governing.
I think this is like the greatest wave of democracy coming into the United States. It started in Porto Alegre, Brazil in 1989.
From there, it spread all over Latin America to over 1,500 cities around the world. In Toronto, public housing tenants have decided how to spend millions of dollars on improvements to their buildings. City council members in Chicago, New York, and other cities have engaged thousands of residents in allocating discretionary funds. Entire cities have launched PB, such as in Vallejo, California, for funds from a sales tax, and in Boston for youth funds. Even schools and universities have used PB.
This was a great opportunity for you to be a part of government and better the city you live in. Like, who wouldn't want to take advantage of that?
you're creating a more educated platform of voters overall. So I think this can only be good for the big project of democracy.
Thank you so much, everyone. So after that video, you might have a better understanding of why LA Repair, why participatory budgeting. But here are some of the goals we have here at the city have for this program. Firstly is power a stronger democracy, right? Deepen the democratic ties between the people and the government. LA Repair participatory budgeting is designed to directly engage underserved communities in deciding how to spend public money. Hopefully with the idea of meeting people where they are, hearing where they're at, and no one's going to know the community better than the people that live there, right? And bridging that gap between services and what they want to see happen in the community, as well as engage more people. Next up is expanding community. The 9 repair zones were identified as the highest need communities that sit at the intersection of race and poverty. LA Repair budgeting program funding will go directly into these communities. And lastly is making history, right? This is the first time the city of Los Angeles has done participatory budgeting, but not the last. Participating in a chance to shape this new endeavor for the city and its impact for years to come, right? So with that being said, hopefully it's not the last time and not going to be the last repair zones. The more people we get out involved with this, the better it looks and the better the impact overall. So with that being said, if you have any questions, by all means, you can drop them in the chat or after the presentation. And
thank you, Omar. I'll take it over from here. So what we want to move into next is then the various ways you can be involved. So there's a few different ways to be involved. And so we would like to break this down from the perspective of individuals within this repair zone, and then also our nonprofit and community-based organizations. So for individuals who are interested in LA Repair, we have 2 key opportunities. First, and the one that we're here to talk about today, is you can volunteer to serve on the advisory committee, which we'll get into more detail next. But if the advisory committee is not the right fit for you, it's not the role that you want to take on, please know then we would love to have you be involved in LA Repair when it comes to sharing your ideas and voting on which programs to fund once we get to those phases of this process. For our nonprofit and community-based organizations, we have 2 opportunities as well. We have the opportunity to host outreach activities and be very involved during our idea collection and vote phases as a community engagement partner. And Edna will be sharing more about what the specifics are of that later on in this presentation. If that's not the right fit for you, nonprofits are also invited to submit a program proposal for grant funding. So when we get to that point where after idea collection, we have a sense of what the most common ideas are and what those program concepts are, that's then a chance for your organization to respond to those program concepts with a proposal and potentially then be on the ballot and hopefully then potentially be funded. So with that, we wanted to make sure that everybody was clear on the various roles that are available here. One thing I wanted to specify for our community-based organization is you do not need to be a 501c3 organization, nonprofit organization, to be a community engagement partner. But to submit a program proposal for grant funding, you do need to be a 501c3 for that opportunity, or to partner with a fiscal sponsor who is a 501c3. So just want to give that caveat going into this for any of our community-based organizations on the call today. Something that we'll be diving into a little bit more detail near the end of the presentation is about the concern for a conflict of interest. We want to make sure that you're aware of this going into the applications, just so you don't inadvertently exclude an opportunity from yourself or the organization that you're affiliated with. We want to be clear that any nonprofit organizations and affiliated individuals may only choose one of the above opportunities to be involved because of this concern around the conflict of interest for anybody receiving funding from the city. So the opportunities that we have right now that are open, the applications are currently open and we're collecting them until Sunday, May 21st, are the positions of the advisory committee member or our community engagement partner. In general, these roles both have, in general, both of these positions have a similar role and responsibility, but we'll get into the specifics of it shortly. These positions are those that would lead the community outreach and engagement activities during our idea collection and vote phases. They'll be responsible for actively participating in our biweekly advisory committee meetings during those key phases. And we're looking for folks then who can work collaboratively in a group setting and really value the diversity of the perspectives that are going to be in that setting and feel comfortable freely exchanging and respectfully exchanging those conversations. These applications are currently available on our website. You can apply at repair.lacity.org/committees. So next, let me get into the specifics of the advisory committee and dig into a little bit more of what those roles and responsibilities look like. So the key here with the advisory committee is that these members serve as representatives of their repair zone to advise the LA Repair team, which would be us at the city and participatory budgeting project, as well as our community engagement partners on the implementation of this work. So they will give us the input from their lived experience, from their perspective on their communities, on how best we can be implementing our outreach and engagement activities during these key phases. The advisory committee members also support the outreach and engagement activities that our community engagement partners are leading by assisting with the participation in those tabling activities or helping with surveying, helping with getting out into the community and supporting the events that our community engagement partners host. So those responsibilities are kind of those two key pieces. They actively participate in the advisory committee discussions, which would include asset mapping for outreach opportunities, summarizing our ideas into program concepts, and preparing for the Get Out the Vote, as well as they support our community engagement partner outreach and engagement activities, including co-hosting information sessions, idea collection activities, and voting events. In order to participate as an advisory committee member, these are our required qualifications. First, you must live within the repair zone boundaries of one of those 6 repair zones that we've noted are currently in this next phase. If you're not sure if you live within those repair zone boundaries, you can look up your home address or the intersection of your address on the map that's located at repair.lacity.org. Advisory committee members must also be at least 16 years of age, and the cutoff for that is January 1st, 2023. We're excited that we can include younger folks in this process. So it's a kind of a new opportunity in a lot of ways that we are not usually able to include folks as young as 16, but we see this as a great opportunity to include youth voices in this type of work. And then lastly, we're looking for folks who bring a real passion for civic participation, civic engagement, who are really passionate about their community and ensuring that this process can be as inclusive and accessible as possible. So this is a volunteer opportunity, and so it's one that does require a lot of your own motivation for seeing this process through, but it's one that a lot of our advisory committee members have shared has been really rewarding because it gives them a greater sense of the community that they are part of, as well as they've built a new community with their fellow advisory committee members. I want to note that with this being a volunteer opportunity, it's not directly compensated if you are an advisory committee member, but we do want to reduce your barrier to participation as much as possible. So please reach out to us if you have any concerns about how best you can be participating in this work, what might be coming up as a possible barrier for you, to see if we can help you with overcoming it so that you can be fully present and fully involved. Some of the key ways that we can help with that is that we may be able to provide access to a computer and internet, since most of our meetings are happening over Zoom, or helping you with issues of food insecurity or childcare in order for you to be able to fully attend our meetings. Next, we have some preferred qualifications to kind of dig into a little bit more of what would be really beneficial for what people can bring to the advisory committee. So we're looking for folks who preferably have experience serving populations that have been historically underrepresented or underserved by the city government. So for example, if you have any experience working with immigrant communities, folks with limited English proficiency, people with disabilities, youth, students, seniors, or veterans, these are some of those groups that we really want to make sure get better represented. And so your experience would be really valuable to this group. Also, folks with experience in community organizing, economic and social justice, voter registration, and or other civic engagement activities bring in a really good sense of how best we can do our outreach and engagement activities effectively. So we would love to have your knowledge brought in, as well as anybody with knowledge and experience in planning or managing public and private projects. Especially if you have any participatory budgeting experience already, we really would value that insight to this group. These preferred qualifications are only that, they're preferred. So I don't want you to feel nervous about applying if you don't feel like you meet some of these qualifications. Just wanted you to be aware of these are some of those kind of extras we're looking for in the application process. And so to give you a sense then of that application and selection criteria, wanted to share with you first a few of the questions you'll see on the application. Like I said, the application is available online. It's through a Google form. And you'll see there's several questions in which we're asking you to provide some short answers so we can get a better sense of who you are, why you're interested in this role, and what you would bring to the team. So for example, one of the questions is to describe in 200 words or less why you should be selected to serve on the advisory committee. This is a good question to really kind of explain what all of your qualities are, what all that motivates you, what really kind of makes you such a good fit for this role. Another question you'll see is around the core values of our program. We're based in the core values of diversity, equity, inclusion, community, and empowerment. And we'd love to hear then what those values mean to you and how you would act on them. We also are looking for folks, part of this being that you are required to live within the repair zone. Your lived experience is extremely important, and we want to make sure that you're bringing that perspective into this group. So with that, we're going to ask some questions about your lived experience, just to get you thinking about, what is it that's impacted you most in your community, and how then that might shape your involvement in this process. For your awareness, each advisory committee will have 7 to 9 members. So that's ultimately the number of folks we will be selecting. It varies depending on the size of the repair zone, and we'll also make sure we have a couple of alternates selected in case anybody needs to withdraw. When it comes to the review, we'll be looking for, we'll be reviewing the applications based on eligibility that you meet our required qualifications. And then we'll be evaluating you on the following criteria. We'll be evaluating you on how well you describe your lived experience, your experience and knowledge of civic engagement, underserved communities, and other specialized skills, and your demonstrated commitment to diversity and inclusion. So the way you answer those short answer questions above is how we'll be able to best score your application. So I really want you to think through how best you can answer it so that we can make sure that we score you effectively through your evaluation of this. And so after we've completed the evaluation of our applications, just want to give you a sense then of that selection process and what to expect. So the LA Civil Rights team, in consultation with the council office that you are within, whichever council district you're part of, will confirm your eligibility and evaluate your responses. Those applicants who score highest through the evaluation will be selected and will be asked then to sign a MOU with the LA Civil Rights team and disclose any potential conflicts of interest. Once we receive your signed MOU and your disclosure form, we'll then send you the invitation for the first advisory committee meeting, which we're expecting to be the last week of June. For awareness, our advisory committee meetings are mostly held over Zoom. They'll be bi-weekly. And so with that, we would just need you to be available to be able to be on that first call virtually. So next I'm going to hand it over to Edna to speak about the community engagement partners and the role there.
Thank you so much, Allison. You can go to the next slide. So right now I'm gonna carry this overview about what are the responsibilities and the means of applying for become a community engagement partner. But first, I want to say that if this is not a good fit for you, and you are a community-based organization, there are many ways that you can still get involved in the process. You can propose a program for funding once the idea selection process is done, and then we have open applications to make a proposal for the projects that are going to be funded in your zone. You can apply to propose a program. You can also offer your space for idea collection or voting events during the whole process. And you can just help spreading the word to just continue being involved with LA Repair. We can go to the next slide. But if you are specifically interested in applying as a community engagement partner, this is a critical role because this is going to be a role and a presence that you're going to have during the whole process. There's a lot of engagement. And there's close guidance to this. The community engagement partners respond to the recommendations of the advisory committee that Allison already explained what it is, and receive a stipend to amplify LA repair through intentional outreach and engagement activities. This stipend is gonna be handed to you so you can cover some of the cost of the activities for outreach and engagement. And just to clarify, you don't need to be a 501c3 organization to apply. You can just be a grassroots organization, and you don't need a fiscal sponsor neither. So there's a lot of flexibility. Some of the responsibilities might include do in-person outreach, digital outreach on social media, maybe send some emails, give some flyers, phone or text and text banking, canvassing, and flyer distribution. And one of the crucial and important things is hosting information sessions so people know what LA repair so they can get involved in the process. The CEPs are going to be really leading outreach and engagement for the idea collection and voting events specifically. But don't worry, you're going to receive close guidance, specifically from me, from Allison, from Omar, from all the people that you see here on the information session. You're going to have a close relationship with us. We can go to the next slide. And as I mentioned, the community engagement partners play a really crucial role. So with that, you're going to have a few extra responsibilities to fulfill with this. So what kind of things you can expect from being a community engagement partner if you're selected? You're probably going to have weekly virtual check-ins with me. So I can go ahead and explain how the process is going, how the timeline is walking. And of course, one of the main roles of the community engagement partners is outreach. So we are expecting to maintain an activity tracker as well to create an engagement plan. So the city and PVP can support you and give you some of the tools that you need to carry this work. That is very, very important. We're also going to be tracking some of the metrics bi-weekly. So we're just going to be discussing how many people are you outreaching, what are the places that you want to be, what are the demographics that you want to target. And one of the responsibilities that you're going to share with the advisory committee is attending one meeting with the city and with PVP every 2 weeks, just to talk briefly and organize how things are going and just receive information about what's happening. Ideally, the community engagement partners will have experience working on their zone. They will have experience doing maybe campaigns, distribution of resources in the community. So ideally, if you have experience doing direct outreach in your community, you can be a perfect fit to apply to be a community engagement partner. We can go to the next one. And this is just an example of some of the strategic planning questions that we're going to be asking on the check-ins, some of the information that you're going to be sharing. So just to be expected to have some level of extra engagement with us when conducting this. We can go to the next one. And as I mentioned, this is a paid opportunity, right? Because we understand that carrying all these events, doing all this outreach comes with some cost. So these are some of the numbers from the zones. So you see the total to your right side. This is the total of funding that we can provide to community engagement partners. But this also depends on how many community engagement partners are selected by zone. For example, if in Westlake, we have 2 community engagement partners selected, the total of $9,100 is going to be divided equally by 2. And that's going to be the stipend that you're going to be receiving. You're going to be receiving a portion for the idea collection part that is going to be before we create the proposals to go to the ballot and vote. And then the rest of the money is going to be disbursed so you can plan the voting events. We can go to the next one. And just to give you an idea, what are some of the questions that we're going to be asking during the application and the selection criteria? We're going to asking you to tell you about the kind of relationship that we have with particular communities and population in your zone. We also gonna ask a description of the organization, what kind of services you provide, what is your mission, to see if you're aligned with the values of LA Repair. And one very important question for us is how have you built trust among the communities that you serve in your zone? We believe that this is such an important question because we want to bring as many people as possible to be engaged, but be informed about what LA Repair is. So we're trying to hit all the demographics and work with a variety of community engagement partners. And one of the things that you're going to be asked in the application to do is draft an outreach and engagement plan. But don't worry, this is going to be something that we're going to be working together in the process if you are selected. So you're going to receive, as I mentioned, close guidance from me and from the city team. We can go to the next one. And I think this is some of the information that also apply for the community, for the advisory committee. So for the selection process, the advisory committee will be reviewing the community engagement partner applications to give some more recommendations about what organizations they prefer to partner with. The selected organizations, as I mentioned, provide a budget breakdown by activities, cost, and phase. So we're asking to provide a budget breakdown of the way that you're going to spend the money and the stipend that we're going to provide you to carry all these activities. And we can also offer support to help you refine these if you are selected. And the organization that I'm working with, the Participatory Budgeting Project, will extend offers and work with recipients. So as well, you're going to sign an MYU as the one that the advisory committee is going to be signing, but this is going to be specifically offered to you by PVP. So you're going to read the agreements, you're going to see some of the breakups of the numbers through the NYU, so we can set the payment process. And I guess that's for me. I know there's a lot of responsibilities for the application of the CP, so I'm going to drop my email here. If you have any following questions regarding the community engagement partner application, please feel free to send me an email so I can answer any question that you have.
Sounds good. Thank you so much, Edna. So next, I'm going to go over the timeline and expectations with these roles. So first, for a sense of the timing, and just to note, while we are expecting us to stick with this schedule going forward, this could be subject to change. For a sense of the timing, the design phase of this work, which is when we first meet with the advisory committee, and then we start to join in with the community engagement partners to plan how we'll implement this process. We're expecting that to happen during late June and throughout July of this coming summer. We would then be prepping during that time to launch idea collection, which we would expect to launch in August through September, which is when our community engagement partners would lead those outreach and engagement activities with support from our advisory committee members in order to collect ideas from the repair zone for how best to spend their portion of the funds. Once we've collected all the ideas, we'll be working to sort of summarize and sort those and lift up the most common themes, the most common ideas, and work with the advisory committee to shape those common ideas into a very clear program concept that's reflective of what the community has lifted up during idea collection. And those program concepts will then be put out through our request for proposals for the proposal development phase. We expect that proposal or those guidelines about the grant and the request for proposals to become available in the fall, likely in October. And this will be the opportunity then for nonprofit organizations to submit their program proposals in response to those ideas. And we would ask during that, that their proposals also include a scope of work, a budget, and their goals and metrics for how they would implement that program over a one-year timeline. Once we've received the proposals and have done an initial evaluation just to confirm feasibility and that everything is aligned with the grant guidelines and the program and the LA Repair program, those proposals that have met our eligibility and evaluation review will then be put forward on the ballot for the community to then vote on which they would like to see funded. We expect the vote for this next cohort to launch around March of next year. And anyone who is 15 years of older who lives, works, or studies, or is the guardian of a student within that repair zone may vote on which program proposals they would like to see funded. After we've completed the vote, we'll do a tally of the votes, and we'll work with the winning proposers to confirm what that ultimate budget will be. We'll then put that forward, the LA Civil Rights team will then put that forward to the City Council to approve the funding for those winning proposals, and to then work with the proposers directly to contract and begin implementing that work. So we would expect the contracts to become final in summer of next year, and those programs would be implemented over the following year. And so to clarify some of those expectations, for both the advisory committee and our community engagement partners, we're expecting kind of the following key components here. One, we would expect you to be available to regularly attend our advisory committee meetings, which are held virtually at this time on Thursday evenings, though this may be subject to change, but they will be in the evenings from 6:30 to 8:30 p.m. These meetings are going to be held every other week during our design, idea collection, and vote phases, and we will take a break from our regular meetings during the proposal development phase. So we would expect there to be a break during that late fall, early winter time. We are expecting there to be a total of about 15 meetings from the launch of the program through its conclusion. So from late June 2023 through early April 2024. We'd also expect then that our advisory committee and our community engagement partners are working to plan and attend our outreach and engagement activities, such as tabling at community events and hosting pop-ups. And that as representatives of LA Repair, you also then will represent the City of Los Angeles and participatory budgeting project in a respectful manner, and that you'll strive to be as welcoming and inclusive in all of your communications and your interactions with the public as possible. Edna, would you like to explain the additional expectations for CEPs?
Yeah, I think a little bit of the things that I already shared. If you're planning on applying for a community engagement partner, you may have to plan to have more direct engage with us. And one of the things that we also want to create is a lot of flexibility to check bi-weekly or weekly check-in. So this is going to be anticipated from the beginning, so we can plan a calendar to have regular touching points just to check how the work is going and the many ways that we can support you to track the progress and to give you the tools to excel in this. But one of the good things is that the meetings will be held via Zoom or Google Meet. So you're going to have a lot of flexibility to work with us. And also you can assign several point persons to follow up with you. It doesn't have to be just one person to carry the responsibility. You can assign several people just to have like multiple responsibilities to respond to this program. We also expect to create a scope of work depending on the capacity of the organization. If you're selected as a community engagement partner, we're gonna have the opportunity to check in at the beginning of the process so we can review capacity and set tentative goals during the process to work around those. So everybody is on the same page, and we also respect the different capacities of different organizations because we understand that everybody's serving different demographics and the zones vary on capacity, size, and accessibility. And one very, very crucial part is that you're going to have to create a feed and activity tracker for events so we can maintain update and help you promote those activities. This is ideal to have also like always updated, so expect to put some work on that. So we can also review that with the advisory committee so they can provide fully support in person, virtually, or recommendations during the meetings that we're going to be holding bi-weekly. So those are some of the examples of some of the specific expectations that we have on the CEPs.
Thanks, Edna. And so lastly, before we open it up for questions, I just want to give kind of a brief overview then of the conflict of interest concern so that you all can have that as part of your consideration of if these roles are the right fit for you. So to clarify, and I'm going to read this just verbatim so we don't have any doubts on this, but organizations affiliated with community members that are serving on the steering or advisory committees are ineligible for the community engagement partnership and from submitting program proposals, depending on the committee members or their family's relationship with the organization and participation in the matter. I know that can get a little bit complicated sometimes to think through, but what we're really looking for is what we would consider some of these key examples of conflicting relationships. So if a steering committee member or an advisory committee member is a paid staff member, a member of the executive team or board of directors, or a major donor to a nonprofit or community-based organization, then either that person should not participate in the committee, or that nonprofit or community-based organization should not participate as a partner or to submit a proposal. So we just need to have this be clear up front so that folks can best understand what's going to be the right role for them, the right role for the organization they might be affiliated with, so that we don't have any of these conflicting interests that could then affect the funding and the decisions around the funding for this program. So for folks that are interested in being a community engagement partner, want to clarify then too, we cannot have you be selected as a community engagement partner and then decide to drop out halfway through so that you can submit a proposal. If you choose to go forward as a community engagement partner, you are committing to just that role, and that you will continue with the program through the idea collection all the way through the vote phase. So that means that community engagement partners are then forfeiting their ability to submit a program proposal and implement projects. To kind of break that down, we want to clarify then too that all community members within the repair zone may share their ideas and vote. But to participate in these three roles, you do need to be mindful of those conflicts of interest. So you do need to choose sort of choose your own adventure. Choose if you feel like you would rather go with the advisory committee role, the community engagement partner, or to propose a program. Those last two being if you are part of a community-based organization. There is one exception. It is likely going to be rare for many of our organizations, but just want to clarify that you may participate in both of these opportunities if they are serving different repair zones in different groups. So for example, since we've already done one cohort, or we're wrapping up, we just finished the vote phase for the first cohort of our Mission Hills, Panorama City, North Hills, Boyle Heights, and Southeast LA repair zones. Any of our proposers from that first cohort, if they would like to be considered as a community engagement partner for one of our repair zones in this next cohort, they may. Any of our community engagement partners from that first cohort, if they would like to propose a program for any of our repair zones in this next cohort, they may. So that's where we can have a bit of a both for a community organization, but just want to be clear that at this point, if you haven't already been involved in the previous 3 repair zones, you do only need to pick one of these opportunities if you want to be involved as an organization, either the partner or to propose a program. If you ever have any doubts or you just want to understand better if there is a conflict of interest or not, please feel free to reach out to me directly, and I'll make sure that we review it with you and review it with our city attorney's office, just to make sure that there isn't going to be any concern going forward. Because again, the reason why we're sharing this and going into this detail now is because we don't want to have any disappointment of folks finding out after they've gone through our application process or after they've committed to doing the outreach and engagement activities during idea collection, to then find out that they're not actually eligible to move forward on a next step because of the conflict of interest. So with that, we're going to conclude our presentation and open it up now for questions and answers. I'm going to stop sharing my screen just so we can be able to see everybody's faces while we're doing this. So let's start with folks who have raised their hand, and then we'll get into the specifics of any questions that came up in the chat. So I see, Manuel, you have your hand up. Do you want to start us off?
Yes. I guess some of them have to do with the last round. I know the city said this is the first time they participated in this. So I'm just wondering if there's anything that was learned from the last round that's going to be beneficial to this round. Because although we did have some people, some friends of us that participated in Southeast LA, a lot of people didn't get all of those notifications, you know, in terms of voting. The other thing that wasn't mentioned here was the electronic vote. You know, nobody's being told that people are going to be able to vote electronically. So when you're preparing your people for voting, I think that's very important for the people to know this, not at the last minute. Also, when it came to the advisory committee, we had people that submitted stuff and never got no kind of answer back, whether they were rejected, whether they was accepted, or anything. It seemed like communication just broke down. So how is that going to work this time around? because we represent Skid Row. Okay, we need to know when those advisory committees are set up, where the voting is going to be taking place. Those type of things, I'm just saying from my report in Southeast, those type of things were not given to the community. It was coming at last minute type of situation. Also a question right now, again, should we be working more closely with our councilmen? Because I don't know, I'm going to be asking them about this last go around in Boyle Heights, because we had people out in Boyle Heights and what programs were actually funded and which programs were actually voted on. Because right now, the major concern is Skid Row is that the money's going to go to all the major nonprofits down there already. You keep saying it's for the, to be going to the community, but it seems like it's going to the major organizations that sometimes, especially in Skid Row, has been a problem in terms of service to the community, in terms of things getting directly to the community. So I just want to know, is there anything you learned the last go around that's going to apply this go around?
That's a great question. And yes, and so through some of those other points that you were making, that has been so much of what we've been learning. We want to acknowledge that with this being a pilot program, we have been developing the program as we've been implementing it. With this being the first time we're doing it, there's going to be a lot of lessons learned for how is it that we could be doing this better. And we really rely then on the feedback of our advisory committee members, our community engagement partners, and just folks in general who have been witnessing the program to share with us what their experiences are, how is it that they're seeing this unfold, and what they feel like could make it more transparent, could make it a more inclusive, engaging process for folks. So I appreciate you raising up some of those concerns you've seen. Wanted to acknowledge, there's a lot of lessons learned, so I don't want to get into all the specifics, but wanted to acknowledge that one of the spaces that we will be sharing back those lessons is now that we've concluded the vote for this first cohort, we're preparing a report to council, which will include our funding recommendations for those proposals that should move forward with funding, as well as an overview then of how this process has gone so far, what lessons we've learned, and how that's going to be implemented into this next cohort. So that's part of our initial findings will be in writing in that report back. We'll make sure that that's available through our website once it's made public. But we expect that report back to become available in the next month or so. It'll just depend on how the final tally of the votes plays out so that we can make sure that everything is firmed up and finalized before we put all that out there publicly. To some of your key questions that came up, want to acknowledge, I'm surprised to hear that there was a sense of a last minute note about online engagement versus in-person engagement. Both of these processes, those key engagement processes, the idea collection phase and the vote phase are going to be held both online and in person. So we make the engagements, the surveys, the vote, the ballots available online for folks to be able to participate at any point. But then we also want to make sure that we're really getting out there, getting across this digital divide that can occur in a lot of our communities, and through our outreach and engagement activities, connecting with people in person as well. So I'm sorry to hear that there was any confusion about that, but I want to be clear up front then. Both of these types of, both these phases will be available both online and in person.
Well, in your presentation, you don't make anything, you just say voting.
Well, so just to be clear, this presentation is focused on these specific opportunities as the advisory committee role and the community engagement partner role. Apologize if that wasn't made clear about the specifics of how we actually implement some of this work. That'll come as we move into these next phases. We'll be giving more information. But for right now, we're looking for folks who are interested in the advisory committee or community engagement partner role. So I know since we have limited time today, I want to focus then on if there are any specific questions about those roles and what we can answer for you now about those roles and responsibilities so that folks feel prepared for the application or feel like they fully understand what the obligations will be. With that then, Luz, would you by chance mind lifting up some of the questions from the chat that you're seeing?
Sure. So we have a question regarding how can we get a list of the projects funded in the previous zones?
So with that, that's going to, what I was just saying about the report. And we haven't yet gotten to that point of being able to complete our vote tally and share what has been funded. But for for the outcome of that, that will be in our report to council, which, like I said, will be available in the next month or so.
We have another question also. Who is monitoring the city and the projects selected?
That's a good question. It's a fair question. So with this, when it comes to the monitoring of the work we're doing, we work so closely with our partners, like Participatory Budgeting Project and the folks that they've brought on through the Trace Lunas Consulting and Escalon Advisors. So we look to them to help us with ensuring that our process is kept transparent, kept fair, kept in line with the principles of participatory budgeting. So it's very much a collaboration between us, and we lean on them in this regard as well. But when it comes to also some of those extra steps, like it's through our engagement with our advisory committee members, our community engagement partners, and in general, the public, to discuss then how is it that we're implementing this program? Are we doing it the best way possible? Are we being as transparent as possible? A lot of our conversations with the advisory committee include those conversations around here's how we're able to move the project forward, but then being within the bureaucracy of the city, here are some of the constraints we have to be mindful of. We may not be able to do X, Y, and Z because of the way our legal system works at the city. And with that, we need to then be clear of like, this is how we can move it forward. With that in mind, how best do we do that for your communities? So we tried to make our spaces with the advisory and community engagement partners an open conversation around what our restraints are and what it is that we can do to adjust as they bring up issues that they're seeing or that they want to see us take some extra steps to ensure that we're keeping this more transparent or keeping this more open.
Thank you, Allison. We have one more question. How will the community be notified? Who are the advisory committee members?
How will we be notified of who the advisory committee members are? I guess, is that for after we've made the selection? With that regard, something that I think has been learned from this last cohort was we were slow to make it publicly known who our advisory committee members were. And with that, that's something that we want to make sure that we are better about going forward. And so I see that it's something that we would make available on our website. We do want to be mindful. I know some of our committee members have just shared that for their own personal safety concerns or their own security concerns, they aren't comfortable sharing their name. So with that, we do need to do a little bit of some respect to that because it is a volunteer role. These are not folks then who are elected officials. These are volunteers, but we will try to make it as public as possible who all is involved with our advisory committee and who our community engagement partners are. For our last cohort, you can see that that information was included in our voting materials, but it's a good point that we need to make sure that we are including that at least on our website so folks can easily access it. And we'll make sure we do that going forward. When it comes to the actual selection, I know, Manuel, you brought this up as a concern that some people never got notified. I'm sorry to hear that. I know there was an email that was sent out to everyone who had applied, so perhaps there was a missed email in there. But with that, that's our goal, is to make sure that we're clear and transparent in our communications with where folks are at in the process. So as we receive back our applications, we will notify folks once we're at the closure of the applications of what the next steps are. Then we'll notify folks if they've been selected. If they haven't been selected, we'll let them know. It's a good reminder if we've missed that step in the last round, I apologize. But it's a good reminder that that is always a good best practice for keeping folks informed of where they're at with any of this process.
Thank you, Allison. I see no more questions in the chat.
Sounds good. Thank you so much. I know this has been a lot of information, but I hope it's been helpful for you all. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us. I see that our email addresses have been dropped in the chat. Thank you, Luz, for that. Like I said, too, the recording from today will be uploaded to our website. It's going to be at repair.lacity.org along with our slide deck. So you can reference that. Please feel free to reach out if you have any additional questions that come up. We hope that many of you are interested in this. We hope that this is the right fit for you. And if so, that you get your applications in. Like I said, that application deadline is going to be Sunday, May 21st. So work on it. It's coming up soon. Thank you all so much. Really appreciate your time today. Hope you all have a good rest of the afternoon.
Thank you so